So if you're here, it's probably because you've gone down the YouTube hole of how in the world do I write for the harp? You've probably watched a lot of videos, got a lot of little tips, and you're trying to make sense of all of it. Do I have to think about the pedals and the hands, and how do I do extended techniques, and why do harpists think my music is too difficult, and all of that. So today I am going to go through my framework for how I teach writing for the harp. And this is a framework that you can use as you're thinking through writing and your compositions to, ease the overwhelm and, learn how to prioritize all of this information that you've gotten. Hi, I'm Danielle Kuntz. I'm a new music harpist, and my mission is to make the harp a little bit less intimidating so it can be something that you are excited about writing for and that you can write for it with confidence. So today in this video, we're going to go through the 3 different categories that I use when I teach writing for the harp. I'm a performer. I've worked with composers for many years, and as I've gone through this process, I've kind of figured out the most effective way to teach writing for the harp. And I want to make it simple. I want to make it not confusing because I want you to have room for creativity. I don't want you to feel like you're trapped in a box and you can only do these things and you can only play these notes and you can only write tonally and none of that. I want you to be able to use your creativity, but also write in a way that you're confident that if you hand your part to a harpist, they can play it. They're not going to be mad at you or anything. So I have 3 categories that we focus on in my lessons and my courses and all of that. The first one is the hands. How do the hands work? How does the shape of the hands and the technique relate to the notes on the page? The second thing is chromaticism, or the pedals. How do you think through pedals and write in a way that reflects your own musicality without feeling trapped into tonal writing if that's not your thing? And then the third is readability, or formatting. There's little quirks that harpists have. So how do you write music in a way that is readable, easy to read, and that the harpist can sight read it if needed? So let's kind of delve into those 3 categories. The first is the hands, or how the hands relate to the notes on the page. So there's 3 things that we're going to go through. The first is the harp technique itself. So the most important thing that you need to know is that the mechanics of playing, or the way that you play the harp, is a little bit slower than what you would do on the piano. If you're playing piano, it's a very quick action. You can drop the finger and you can easily reset and be able to move and do that same motion on a different key. On the harp, it's a little bit slower. You have actually 4 motions of playing. So you have to place the note on the string. So instead of just dropping, you have to actually, hook your hand, anchor it on the string. You have to press, so that means making sure you have good contact with the string, otherwise you're not going to get a good sound. Then you have to close. Then you have to actually reopen your hand to be able to replace back on the string. So it's a fairly involved motion, more so than this motion. So this is why a lot of harpists might say that something is too fast or there's too many notes, even though it would be completely playable on piano. It's simply because the mechanics of playing are a lot slower. There's a couple of ways that we can get around that, and the biggest way is by grouping notes together. So we can combine these movements into a single movement where we can place multiple notes at the same time, press them, then we can play the notes individually, but since we're all prepared, that can happen really quickly. And then we can come back on and replace. So as you're writing, if you can think through grouping notes together, that will enable the harpist to be able to play faster and quicker. Now, the third thing that we have to think about is the shape of the hands. If you look at the hands, the way that we play on the harp, it's a little bit different from piano. On the piano, the hands are oriented opposite each other, which means if you have your general layout, this isn't a hard and fast rule, but a general layout, your larger intervals are going to be on the inside of a chord and your smaller notes will be on the outside. Now, of course, this doesn't always hold true, always in all repertoire, but this is kind of a general thing. On the harp, that the hands are oriented in the same position. So the same direction. That means thumbs are on top, fingers are on the bottom. We're also a little bit more limited on how far we can reach the lower fingers, just because the stretch is a little bit different. So if you generally write patterns that use larger intervals on top, smaller intervals on the bottom, that helps the harpist be able to play them comfortably without straining their hand, versus having something that requires a really large interval on the bottom where we're having to stretch our hand. Now, as you're looking at my hand, you might be wondering, what about the pinky? Why aren't we using the pinky? And this has to do with the shape of the hands again. If I am using a comfortable, relaxed hand position, you'll notice that my pinky can't actually reach the harp. It can't reach the strings. If I try to adjust my hand so that the pinky can hit the strings, I'm having to really strain my hand and I'm losing a lot of strength in my inner fingers. So for practical reasons, almost any solution is better than using the fifth finger. So those are kind of the topics that we talk about with hand position. Now there's a lot more involved in that. If we're thinking about, the register of the harp, how the harp rings, the lower notes on the harp are going to ring longer than the upper notes, and that affects how you think about intervals. So when I work with composers, we do kind of map out what types of intervals we can do between different fingers. So those are the general things that you need to think about. You need to think about the motions of playing, you need to think about the blocking, and the shape of the hands. Now, the second category is thinking about chromaticism. So you can map out the notes and you can map out all of that, but what about if you want to have a sharp or a flat, or do something a little bit crazy? Now, this has to do with the pedals. So when I change a pedal, what happens is the discs that are on the harp, they turn to make the string a different pitch. So anytime that you want a different sharp or flat, it requires a pedal change. So you have to kind of be mapping that out and thinking through that as you work through the piece. I do have a full video on pedal charts and how to do all that, so I will link that here. You should go ahead and check that out. But as you're writing, have a pedal chart and you can think through what's possible and what's not possible. If you are aware of what is going to be required. So for instance, the way that we have the pedals mapped out on the harp, we change 3 of them with the left foot, 4 of them with the right. So if you have pedal changes that we can do at the same time, meaning that they're used with 2 different feet, we can do those at the same time, not a problem. However, if you need 2 pedals done at the same time that are done by the same foot, that's a whole different story, and you're going to have to think a little bit more strategically about that, and that might mean leaving out a note or changing the voicing or something so that you have time for those pedal changes. But again, I go through all of that in the other video that I have linked. Now, the third category that we talk about is formatting and notation, or how you actually engrave the score. I am a huge believer that readability is a big factor in playability. And the reason for that is because harpists have to actually look at our hands as we play. The strings more or less feel the same across the harp, so we are having to kind of visually look at the instrument rather than a violin where you're more playing by feel, or piano where you can use the black keys to help you navigate around the instrument. So when we're reading music, we're having to quickly glance at the music, at our hands, probably at a conductor if we're in an orchestra, so we're having to quickly glance in this triangle pattern. So that means when we're glancing at the music, we're gonna have to be able to quickly read it. We have to be able to, not lose our place. So music that's really crowded or uses a funky font, things like that are going to be problematic for a harpist. The other thing is page turns. We can only turn the page with our left hand. So if you are formatting something that doesn't allow space for a page turn, that's going to be a problem. And the last thing is margins. Harpists usually have to just add a lot of notes in the page, whether we're adding in extra pedal charts for rehearsal purposes, or fingering notes, or any other regular rehearsal stuff, like crescendo here, look at the conductor here, we're doubling this instrument here, that kind of thing. If it's really crowded in the score, there's not going to be room for us to be able to make those necessary notes. So thinking through margins and making sure that there's enough space on the score is extraordinarily helpful. Now in this discussion, I haven't even gotten into extended techniques. That's a whole other category. I'll probably be doing a couple of videos on that as well. But the three categories that you need to think through are going to be hands, how you play the notes, 2, pedals and how you navigate chromaticism, and 3, formatting or how you write the score. If you want to learn more, I encourage you to follow me. Join me on Patreon. I share some handouts and exclusive video tutorials with my Patreon community. Or if you really want to do a deep dive and make sure you get all the information you need, you can sign up for the waitlist for my new Harp course. It's a self-guided 5-week course that you can complete on your own time that will really help you delve into all of these topics. And it's not just me talking at you, it's a chance for you to actually practice it. So you get a video tutorial and then you get an activity for you to actually learn how to do it. In the meantime, be sure to subscribe to get more videos, and I will be sharing more with you very, very soon. Bye.